Haters TV is delighted to be working in partnership with Retro Football Manager, a fast-growing retro-themed football management app with over 120,000 active users. Dive into over 200 plus seasons, many with multiple divisions, and relive football history. You can manage the club you support and lead them to glory. Compete with other managers on individual and club leaderboards to find the very best online football managers. Pick any era, manage legendary teams and players, and lead your club to victory. It's absolutely fantastic. All the relevant info and download links are in the description below.
And we are go. It's Friday, the 4th of July, and it's the latest edition of the Haters TV Transfer Daily. And it's a super special one today because, as you can see alongside me, not literally, but in the virtual Haters TV studio, we've got Simon Collings of the London Evening Standard. How's it going, Simon?
I'm very good. How you doing?
Yeah, very good. Yeah. You've been busy writing some transfer stories today. What's been going on?
Yeah, Arsenal was very quiet, hasn't it? But it's kind of the last 2 weeks picked up a bit. I did have a slight chuckle when sort of 1st of July rolled round and it was a backup goalkeeper being announced and not a new striker. But I'm sure a striker will eventually come. But at least I think for Arsenal fans, they're starting to see the sort of wheels turning and players coming in the door.
Yeah, what can you tell us about? I mean, one of the stories I was sort of alerted to this morning was that there's some genuine interest in Martinelli. What's the situation with Martinelli? And if he did go, what would that have an impact on in terms of maybe other players coming in?
Yeah, I mean, the Martinelli one is an interesting situation simply because, I mean, if you were looking in that squad and you were trying to raise, sort of serious money, if you wanted to, boost your bank balance, I think he's probably the one you would look at and say, you could sell. He's had a sort of mixed few seasons. He was obviously brilliant in that first title challenge campaign. He's not really been at it. I don't think Arsenal are sort of actively trying to sell him, is anything like that. I think what would be interesting is if a club, and their reports aren't there from sort of Saudi Arabian teams being interested, if that big bid come in, I would be intrigued to see what Arsenal's stance is, whether they accept it. But, I think he's a player Arteta likes. He's very happy in London. Arsenal like him. But, yeah, it's one where I would be intrigued to see what the situation was if that interest materialised into a sort of formal offer.
And, of course, whether he would want to uproot and go to Saudi Arabia as well, which a lot of Brazilian players have over the years. But I would imagine he would rather stay. He's very much at home, isn't he, at Arsenal? He just hasn't really kicked on in the last season or two like everyone thought he would, has he?
No, he was so good in that first year, wasn't it, when the 22-23 season. And a part of that, I do wonder whether it was Jesus. I think they had a great connection, those two players, sort of rotating roles. He's still so young, though. I think he's 23. For me, I would personally, I'd want to try and maybe give it another year and see if you can get that left side of the pitch a bit more settled, possibly got a new sort of creative player in there, in Eze, something like that, Zubimendi coming in, couldn't that maybe get a bit more out of him? But I can also understand the argument where if you get serious money, and at the end of the day, you can't just keep spending money, you've got to get money coming in. It would be tempting to let someone like that go.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite easy to get emotionally tied to sort of players and never want anyone to leave, but they have to keep churning the squad to make it more competitive and fresh. I think you might have been writing a bit about Rodrigo at Real Madrid today. I mean, would that be an upgrade of Martinelli? And what are the chances of that deal coming off?
Yeah, I mean, from what we've seen reported so far, the Athletics Spanish correspondent was sort of saying that Madrid are open to a sale. I think if that is the case, can't see it just being Arsenal who'd be interested in him. I think a lot of clubs would want to sign a player like that. From his side, you can understand the attraction of probably wanting to be a bigger fish somewhere. I think, at Madrid, you kind of get swallowed up by Vinicius and Mbappe. He also reportedly wants to play on the left, which he can't do at Madrid. For Arsenal, that slot in the team would be open. I think it's probably one of those, it feels like if it's going to happen, it's going to be after the Club World Cup. I can't see Madrid kind of sanctioning a sale like that during the middle of the tournament. I mean, he's not played. I think he's had 3 games in a row on the bench for Real Madrid there. He's not in the team, which kind of speaks more than what Alonso will say in his press conferences. I do wonder, I don't know what you think, I do wonder is there an issue if the fact that he's been away at this sort of Club World Cup, which, could be another 10 days or so if Madrid go all the way to the final, and then suddenly Arsenal sign him? Like, he's going to need a holiday, isn't he? You couldn't bring him straight to Singapore if he's been away for 4 or 5 weeks in the heat of the US. Does that make it a bit of an issue? I don't know. As a player, I like him. I think he's a really exciting player. I think he would give Arsenal something different. I just have reservations about kind of chasing that golden goose for the summer and not getting it at the end.
Yeah, I understand you. And I always get slightly sort of triggered when I think, why Real Madrid open to selling supposedly one of their best players? What's going on in the background there? Is there a problem? Has he got injuries, or has he got attitude problems or something like that? But it's just, you don't think of them as selling their best players, do you? Even because it's just not how they operate. What else is happening at Arsenal? Are we expecting anything to get over the line this week, next week? Zubimendi or?
Yeah, Zubimendi is just a case of being announced. It's all done. I think the Norgard deal sounds like it's progressing all fine. We heard from Phil Giles, Brentford's director of football, at the start of the week, who said it's all sort of heading in the right direction. I think Brentford are kind of accepting of his service to the club and the fact he's probably due the chance of a big move. Mosquera is the other one we're kind of waiting to see what happens. A lot of the stories from that are coming over from the sort of Spanish press, which is from obviously the Valencia end, and the sort of message coming there is that he doesn't really want to sign a new deal at Valencia, so they need to cash in this summer. But it's about Arsenal getting the money that Valencia want, which I think in the Spanish press are saying is around sort of 20 million euros. Yeah. Arsenal try and think they can do it for less than that. But that's a position I think Arsenal need. I think they need a bit of cover at centre-back, but certainly right centre-back, because Saliba played so many games last season, didn't he?
Which could mean Kiwior going. A good time to sell him, even though he did so well last season.
Possibly. Kiwior kind of falls in that bracket of, is it that good time to sell? Arsenal have had that in the past and they haven't done it. I wouldn't shock me if he stays. I think if you brought in another right centre-back, you could have 8 defenders in terms of Calafiori, Lewis Skelly as your left backs. You could have White and Timber as your right backs, and then Gabriel and Saliba with Kiwior and Mosquera or another as your backup centre backs. So that would give you 8 defenders for the 4 positions, which would be perfect. Plus Zinchenko if he stays. So it wouldn't stun me if Kiwior stayed. I think that's going to be a case of if he's happy being that backup again, because he played 10, 11 games in the back end of the season, looked really good. Is he then going to want to go be on the bench again? I'm not so sure.
We must move on from Arsenal because people want to hear about Chelsea, United, and Tottenham, etc. But there's news on Tomiyasu this morning, and he's not going to be competing for a place next season, is he?
No, contract's been mutually terminated. Disappointing again, really. Just been blighted by injuries the whole time at Arsenal, hasn't he? Not really had a consistent run where he could show himself, and he would have been a perfect player actually because he plays all across that back line. But I think it sounds like, reading from Arsenal's statement, it's a case of both parties thinking, an opportunity to maybe find a new chapter, get a fresh start, and it's a sad end to a career that promised a lot more at Arsenal than it ultimately ended up doing.
And last Arsenal bit, I'm not even sure if this is Arsenal, but a player they've been linked with for the last year or two is Nico Williams, and he's not going to be coming either.
No, he's that sort of news landed this morning that he's signed a 10-year contract at Athletic Bilbao, which kind of feels very Todd Bowley Chelsea-esque. That a big long-term deal. Real statement from then. His release clause has gone up by 50%. So it was £50 million. It will be £75 million now. I think Arsenal, their interest, they've obviously liked him for a lot of time. I think their interest had slightly decreased at the start of this window. I think Barcelona and Bayern Munich were viewed as the sort of main front runners. But either way, it looks like he's going to stay there. What is his boyhood club? And maybe that's just the emotional side of it has ended up persuading him to stay where he is.
Yeah. Club World Cup, Chelsea going great guns. They've almost got a clear path to the final. And they're buying players like mad again. What do you know about what's going on at Chelsea? And obviously they're going to have to let some players go. Maybe Madueke is one of them. How do you see Chelsea at the moment?
Yeah, Chelsea are kind of continuing that policy, aren't they, of going for the best, young players. João Pedro, I think, falls into that bracket. Gittins falls into that bracket. And that's the model they've gone for. And that model also involves quite a lot of player trading, doesn't it? Players going out the door. And that's going to be possibly the situation with Madueke. Gittins coming in and Pedro. those sort of attacking players behind the striker looks quite congested now. When you throw in Pedro Neto, when you throw in Cole Palmer. So whether he stays or not, I think we're going to have to see. I think the interest from Arsenal has been reported. I can understand why Arsenal would like him, because he can play both sides. He's Premier League proven, which we know Arteta loves. And, that position of trying to find a backup for Saka is so hard. Whereas if you sign someone who can play left or right and you're pitching that move, you can almost say, look, you might not be playing. You don't always have to wait for Saka to be out to play. You could play on the left. So I wonder whether that makes Madueke a more of an attractive option than getting an out-and-out right winger who knows, unless Saka's not fit, I can't get in the team.
Looking at other sort of rivals at the top of the table, Man City did quite a lot of business before the Club World Cup, and I don't know if they've got more to come. Man United seem set on Ollie Watkins and Mbuemo, which I guess if they really want him, they'll get that over the line. But you tell me otherwise if you think. But Liverpool, the champions, have already got Wirtz, and now it looks like. I think you're reporting in the Standard they're getting closer to Mark Guehi at Palace, which would be a huge signing in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Guehi is the strongest one who's being linked for centre-back. I think they were in for Dean Howson, obviously went to Real Madrid. That centre-back area, obviously there's Konate, I think, is in the final year of his deal. Nothing signed. Van Dijk, obviously, is coming towards the latter part of his career. So I think they need centre-back cover there. And I think Guehi would be a brilliant signing. Possibly the issue you're going to have with him is he's got 1 year on his deal. Is he going to want to make that move now? Are Palace going to want to sell him now? They've got hopefully European football in the Europa League, pending that announcement. Whereas if he waits a year's time, goes to the World Cup, and he's a free agent after that, and if he has a tournament like he did at the Euros, he's going to have his absolute pick of teams. So that'll be an interesting one to see. But I agree with you. I think Guehi would be a brilliant signing for Liverpool or any top club for that matter.
And what's going on down the road at Tottenham, champions of Europe that they are now? New manager. They've been linked with a couple of players. I think they've signed one guy from Japan, and they're trying to get Kudos from West Ham. Is that right?
Yeah, Spurs' window's not really got going yet, has it? Which is probably a sort of knock-on effect of the situation with Ange and him getting out the door. Kudos is the sort of most interesting piece of business at the moment that seems to be bubbling away. From West Ham side, they need to sell to raise money. So I think Kudos has got quite a big release clause, but I think Spurs are trying to hope that they can maybe get it under that. You could see the attraction, I think, for Tottenham. I think having that kind of attacking player who could, again, play multiple positions, pacey, powerful. If you look at the forwards that Frank had at Brentford and how well he used them, the likes of Mbuemo, the likes of Sade, the likes of Visser, I think Kudus kind of fits that mould and would be quite an exciting signing. I think for Tottenham fans, if you could get someone like that in the door. You don't see many players make that move, do you, though? The sort of Spurs to West Ham move. I'm trying to think the last one who did it, maybe Scott Parker all those years ago. But that's quite a rare move. With that rivalry, you don't see many people make that move.
No. So, Si, thanks so much for your time. I have to remind people that we're bringing this show to you today in association with Retro Football Manager. I'm going to let my colleague Danny Ludds explain how that all works.
HSTV is delighted to be working in partnership with Retro Football Manager, a fast-growing retro-themed football management app with over 120,000 active users. Dive into over 200-plus seasons, many with multiple divisions, and relive football history. You can manage the club you support and lead them to glory. Compete with other managers on individual and club leaderboards to find the very best online football managers. Pick any era, manage legendary teams and players, and lead your club to victory. It's absolutely fantastic. All the relevant info and download links are in the description below.
Thanks, Dan. Anyway, Si, thanks very much. I don't know what you've got on for the rest of the day today, a busy weekend ahead, but are there any sort of deals bubbling under that you think could still surprise people, or any sort of left field moves that could come up? That's a bit of an unfair question.
Oh, I don't know. It's a difficult one. I just think the most interesting deal, whoever it's going to be, is that Arsenal striker deal. Maybe that's because it's something that I'm obviously very interested in for work, but I feel like it's the $1 million question. Well, certainly a lot more than $1 million, actually, isn't it? That's going to be answered. Who is going to be that Arsenal striker? And I think when it finally, the club decide and the club go for them, there's going to be so much talk about that. So I feel like that for the rest of the window is kind of the thing I'm going to be most intrigued to see what happens. And finally, the search will be over, and whoever comes in, they're going to have to be ready for the pressure on their shoulders, because it's going to be pretty big, I think.
So they're going to want to get that deal done before they go to Singapore for the pre-season.
I would think so, because it's a kind of a position that's going to need time to bed in. I mean, maybe the argument from Arteta's side and the club side in terms of bargaining positions is, Kai Havertz is obviously ahead of schedule, wasn't he? Played the back end of last season, so there's not that massive rush to get in. But Arsenal 2 years ago, when they had the same sort of situation where there was a non-tournament summer, they made the aim of getting everyone in by the time they flew to the US. And they did that with Timber, Rice and Havertz. So I think that'll be their sort of aim for all the signings, really, to try and get them in there. Obviously, sometimes you can't, but that's when the big work happens, isn't it? As you know, when you're on those tours, that's when the real hard work takes place. And I think certainly for the striker, Arteta would want him there to bed him in. Yeah,
I mean, we've been waiting for a striker for about since Alan Smith retired. I think they haven't had an out-and-out striker. Let's see. I mean, I think they'll try everything they can to make it happen, but it wouldn't surprise me if it goes right through into August and they go to Old Trafford for the opening day with Mikel Merino leading the line. Anyway, Si, thanks again. We've got Ben Jacobs coming up over the weekend, joining us from America, where he's covering the World Club Cup with our correspondent out there, Japtesh Gura. Tune in for that. Like, subscribe, press the buttons, and you'll get an alert when Ben goes live Saturday, Sunday. Don't know, I have to speak to the bosses about that one. And there we go. Cheers, Si. See you soon.
Thanks, mate.